Hello, welcome to Hotline Live with Record Sport. My name is Daniel Caw. I'm delighted to be joined by the one and only Keith Jackson. Keith,
Daniel,
how's it going?
well, you were pining for it, weren't you? The return of the football. We're back.
It's back.
It's back.
It's back. And one man who
And
witnessed
by the way, what's the old saying? The more things change, the more they stay the same. It's just like groundhog season already. One day.
One man who was there to see it return today at Celtic Park was one and only Ryan McDonald. Ryan, how's it going?
Not bad, gents. How you enjoy the game from your comfy sofas?
It's called working, Ryan. It's called in the preparation.
Obviously, we were talking during the game, Ryan, on Messenger.
Yeah.
I think we were both agreed it didn't really feel like it was going to be Celtic's day, but obviously they got there in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I felt no over it at half time, to be honest. And then Celtic made the changes and it sparked them into life a little bit. Obviously, Luke McCowan made the difference, but yeah, I just thought they were really flat, uninspiring, turgid, devoid of quality and ideas. Adam Ida, he struggled over pre-season. He's looked off the pace again today. He spun so many chances. Kieran Tierney, how many balls, how many crosses does it take for Ida to score? He had 3 or 4 brilliant opportunities. I know he obviously hit the woodwork as well from close range, but there's 1 or 2 headers he should have done better with. Cheval George pulled off a couple of great saves, but yeah, I mean, this was his chance today to prove a lot of people wrong, get the season off to a flyer, and once again, I just felt he fell short. Yang as well. Somehow he finds himself promoted as a first-team starter. I don't know how Celtic have found themselves or got themselves in this position with tens of millions sitting in the bank. It's quite astonishing that we sit here in 2025 and Celtic are relying on a 34-year-old James Forrest to get him out of jail. Which, by the way, James Forrest was excellent when he came on, and he's been excellent for the past 2 or 3 years. But at 34-year-old, you've got to have more quality in the ranks, in the bench. I think there's definitely a lot of work to do. Luke McCowan, I feel, got Celtic out of jail today. Yes, they've obviously spun a load of chances, but they're really short of firepower and a goal scorer up front, that's for sure. And I think they seriously lack creativity in the wide areas because Yang's just not going to do it.
Do you know what the funny thing is, Ryan? I've just listened to Brendan Rodgers after the match, and he was dead upbeat. He said it was a really good level of performance, and I don't know who he's trying to kid, because Celtic was so much below par with that performance today. It came as a bit of a surprise. I must say, as soon as the triple substitution gets made, I think there's a goal coming. One, because Luke McCowan has done it over and over again, but 2, because you know that James Forrest is going to get at people down that right-hand side and really affect the game in a way that Yang just doesn't seem capable of doing. And I know that Forrest is no spring chicken, but there's a reason that he keeps seeing all these wingers off the premises, Ryan. It's because he's really good at what he does, and I think he showed again in his short cameo today. He's still got the pace to get by people, whether it's on the outside or cutting in the inside. I just think that the 2 of them, when they come onto the pitch, all of a sudden you felt Celtic were going to get that breakthrough moment.
Yeah, no, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm probably James Forrest's biggest fan. The most decorated Celtic of all time. He's been exceptional since he first broke into the team in 2010 and scored against Motherwell, of course, in his debut. And ever since then, he's kicked on. I think he's proved a lot of people wrong as well. He's turned opinion. I've been at Celtic Park many times over the years, and he's been getting dogs abuse in the stands. But I think people now appreciate what he brings to the team. And today, when he came off the bench, as I say, 34 years old. He just defies age, to be honest. He doesn't even look like a yard short of pace. He just continues to cause problems down that right-hand side or on the left-hand side as today. So, I'm not having a go at him. I just feel that Celtic should have more in their ranks, especially on the bench today. I know you've got £11 million Arnie Engels on the bench, but is he really going to come on and change the game? They just don't have. I don't think they have enough quality, strength and depth in the team just now, and obviously Brendan Rodgers knows that. He's desperate for signings up front, and he definitely need a goal scorer. I was actually chatting to Pat Nevin at half time, and he made a good point. See if Kyogo was starting today, do you think he would have scored 2 or 3? Do you think Celtic would have 2 or 3 in front at half time?
Potentially.
I think he would have. So that kind of tells you all you really need to know. They need a goal scorer, they need a striker. Another thing as well, Johnny Kenny coming on ahead of Shin Yamada.
I thought that was a bit peculiar.
Is that maybe because he's a bit rusty? I don't even think you can say Shin Yamada's rusty because he looked was sharp as attack. And when he came off the bench in Al-Ali, obviously he scored that winning penalty as well in the shootout, which you'd think would be a confidence booster and he'd at least get some game time today. But Johnny Kenny, I don't know, is he ahead of Shin Yamada in the pecking order? Is Brendan sending a message to the board? I don't know. There's a lot of kind of questions today. Another thing as well, I think Liam Scales ahead of Austin Trusty, slightly harsh. But again, Scales did nothing wrong. He was solid. I think Mikael Mandron's a handful up front, and Scales dealt with any kind of danger, so fair play to him. But Austin Trusty coming off the bench, felt it was a wee bit harsh. I think he'd really impressed over pre-season, and at £6 million, he's got a point to prove. And I was surprised to see him bench, but it just shows you, we're talking about the lack of quality and strength and depth, but at the same time, I suppose you've got £6 million Austin Trusty on the bench, you've got an £11 million Ari Engels on the bench, you've got a £3-4 million Paulo Bernardo on the bench at Celtic. I think they're still devoid of quality. I just don't know themselves in this position.
Go tell that guy to shut up.
Apologies. No, he's always speaking to the managers now.
Well,
I guess here.
The comments are coming in thick and fast, and a lot of them are on Adam Ida. Mark says, God, that was a hard watch. Ida and Yang should never start again for Celtic again. Ida is the worst starting number 9 since Stuart Slater. He should be punted ASAP. Do you share those sentiments, Keith?
Well, that's going back a bit Stuart Slater, isn't it? Look, you know what my thoughts are on Adam Ida. I think that he's got all the tools. I just wonder if he's got the stomach for it. I look at him and I think he looks a bit lacklustre. I just want more. Every time I see Adam Ida start a game for Celtic, I'm thinking, are you giving everything, big man? Are you really emptying the tank out there? Because I'm not convinced he is. I think he coasts. I think that his physical strength, his pace, he should be more of a challenge for central defenders. I don't think he puts himself about enough. And I just come back to every time I see him play, I think you could be given another 10% here. And I just don't see it in him. And I'm afraid that it's getting to the point now, Mark is always on commenting, doesn't like him at all. And it is getting to the point now, if he's not going to get the finger out and start delivering, then he's actually wasting the opportunity of a lifetime to make himself a real hit at Celtic Park. He's got the number 9 shirt. And if on the back of that performance today, if Brendan Rodgers has got another striker in mind, and I'm sure he will do, he'll be going to his board saying, you need to deliver. You need to deliver, because that team cannot have Adam Ida as its focal point in attack. It's not going to work. And unfortunately for Adam Ida, he's had too many chances now, and he just doesn't look like he's going to deliver. I mean, obviously, the night he got 2 goals at Aston Villa, you're thinking, is this it? Is this his moment? Is this when he catches fire? But it just doesn't look as if it's going to happen for him. And as soon as he went off the pitch, Celtic looked as if they carried more threat. Now, whether that's because of Luke McCowan or what Forrest was doing down the right-hand side, but if Adam Ida stays on that pitch, I'm not entirely sure that Celtic won the game. And that's a very difficult state of affairs for him in terms of justifying his position. I think Ryan's absolutely right. I've said it for ages now. Celtic really need to give their manager a quality centre forward before the transfer window closes. And I think there was a bit of subtle messaging coming out in many of the decisions that Brendan Rodgers made today, perhaps in his after-match assessment as well. Subtle things, about as subtle as a hammer over the head, because what he's saying is, this is what I've got, and it's plainly not good enough, because Celtic are in a weaker state right now than they were in January. And Brendan Rodgers will find that unacceptable. We talked about it last week, Daniel, and Brendan Rodgers came out ahead of the weekend and said pretty much everything that I'd been saying. Celtic's board have a responsibility to match his ambition. If he doesn't believe that they're going to do that, he'll not be staying. And he's made that crystal clear now.
Ryan, we're getting a few people in the comments as well talking about Kieran Tierney. You mentioned him a little bit there in your summary. He obviously went off, I think, just past the hour mark. He didn't look... people saying he is injured, he's not injured. Either way, I would Celtic need to get another left back in. Liam Scales can play there. He's very competent, but he's not a left back, in my opinion.
Yeah. To be honest, we were talking this off air. I was surprised when I read. I think it was maybe coming from Sky or BBC that Tierney had come off with an injury. He didn't look injured to me, I must say. I think he just kind of more or less went out of steam a wee bit. Obviously, he's not played much football for Arsenal, and he was up and down that left hand side, rampaging up the left flank for certainly most of the first half. And then I think he came off just after the hour mark. So I think for his second debut, it was outstanding, especially in the first half. I mean, I don't know how many balls he needs to lay in a plate for Adam Idah to score. Just on Adam Idah, I can agree with much of what Keith said there. I think he's just a really frustrating player. Like Keith says, I think he's got all the tools to be a Celtic striker, but for whatever reason, he just feels as if he's not giving that 100%. He's still got another, he's still got so much more to give. I think that was the case again today. But yeah, Tierney, I thought he played extremely well on the left-hand side. It was interesting because I didn't see any sign of the fullbacks playing inverted. They were bombing forward, overlapping runs past Yang. Yeah, past Yang, past Maeda. So I wonder if we're going to see a different style for Celtic this season. Because, they don't have, obviously, Kieran Tierney and Alistair Johnson, that's not their best position. They're best suited to, obviously, overlap, and that's the trademark. And bombing forward, so rather than tucking into the centre. So it was an interesting shift today, and I wonder how that will go going forward, especially in Europe. When you come up against these elite teams. But yeah, as I say, I thought Tierney played really well today. I didn't see any injury. I think he might have just kind of run out of steam a wee bit towards the end, and it was a really good second debut.
He looked a bit stiff coming off the pitch, Ryan, but that's probably understandable.
He got a mass. Yeah, he got a bowed section towards the end. He was walking around obviously the traditional lap of honour. The Green Brigade were chanting his name, and they seemed to be pretty chuffed with that. So I don't think he's anything to worry about. We'll probably hear more from the manager on that, but he certainly didn't seem to take a heavy knock or anything like that. So it's maybe just a act of caution. But I think just in terms of what you said, Dan, about a left back, it's Inamura wasn't on the bench today. Again, is that another message from the manager to the board that he needs another left back? I think he hinted at that in Friday's press conference, that he wasn't fully convinced that Inamura would be an able deputy for this season going forward. So I wouldn't be surprised to see another one come in. Liam Scales came in, shifted out to the left back, did a job, but he's not going to be the answer if Kieran Tierney gets an injury and you need somebody to fill in for him, especially in the Champions League. That's just not going to work. So I think definitely a left back is going to be on the wanted list.
I'll tell you one thing though about that. St Mirren's right back, Jayden Richardson. I mean, there was some amount of traffic coming at him down that side in the first half with Maeda and Tierney kind of tag teaming him on that side. I thought the boy was terrific. I thought he was a real great turn, and he looks like a good bit of business for St Mirren. And Stephen Robinson's so adept at using the English market and finding these guys. I thought St Mirren had the biggest players on the pitch in terms of defensively outstanding. They were really unlucky, but just in the end, it's that sheer volume of pressure that Celtic come at. Late in the game, we've seen it time and time again. That's why I said it's kind of groundhog feel. This is what Celtic do. And I know Scott McDermott's going to join us later, but, conversely, the flip side of that coin, you've got a Rangers side that are in a winning position and they find a way to drop 2 points. You get Celtic in late in the game, 0-0, could drop a couple of points and they find a way of winning. And that's the difference. And that's why, the one weekend into the season, and it's not even the full picture card, still got a game to go tomorrow night. But already Celtic have opened up a gap over Rangers. And, that it's this relentless nature. And what I think as well, Ryan, and why James Forrest is invaluable in terms of that squad is he embodies the culture. He's a guy that comes onto the pitch and he realises with 10, 15 minutes to go, no, that was not good enough. He has to do something, and he takes that responsibility on his shoulders to go and try and be a game changer. And he's done it year after year, season after season. and that's him done it again to get Celtic out of a sticky situation this afternoon. And it's when I talk about the importance of the culture, it's guys like the James Forrest, Cal McGregor. He thought he had the breakthrough goal. It's these guys that they're tried and tested, and they absolutely understand the requirements of the football club. And you know, these are the sort of players that Rangers don't have, and that I think is a key differential between the two sides.
Ryan, I understand you've got a lot of post-match duties to be getting on with, so I can let you go. It's always a pleasure having you in the hotline, though, and safe travels up the road when the time comes.
I enjoyed that, guys. Thanks very much.
Cheers, Ryan. All the best.
Cheers.
Ryan McDonald there, and there he is, his substitute, the one and only Scott McDermott. How's it going?
I've always been a good super sub, Daniel.
There he is, James Forrest.
Look, McCowan. It's been ages, Scott, since you've been on properly. It's
feel like a while, between the holiday and then going to Athens for the Rangers game. It's been a wee while, Daniel. I've missed you.
Keith was saying every night how much he missed you.
Oh, I believe it.
Well, we've obviously talked about Celtic, obviously, today. You were at the Rangers game yesterday, Scott?
Yep.
What did you make of it?
Well, it was funny there. I was watching these and seeing some of those comments coming through for Celtic fans. I watched the Celtic game and they're saying that's a hard watch. I mean, if they thought that was a hard watch, they should try being a Rangers fan watching that performance at first. Oh, Jesus. No, listen, it was really poor for Rangers yesterday, especially the second half. I mean, first half wasn't great, but you know, they get the goal. I thought they played in flashes in the first half. I thought they showed wee glimpses of what the manager's trying to do. They get themselves in front. And as Keith touched on there, I mean, he summed it up perfectly. I mean, in the second half, you know, that Rangers team came out 1-0 up. They have a real opportunity to go and get a kind of statement win on the opening day of the season. After the last 2 years, Rangers dropping points in the first game. They're shooting into the Rangers end at Fir Park, and they had no desire, no hunger, didn't play with any intensity or tempo, showed absolutely nothing in the second half to go and kill Motherwell off and get a second or third goal. And as Jack will say, Celtic are the complete opposite. No, the complete opposite in terms of when they're going to try and win games. And look, I'm sure we'll go into the manager's comments later, but as he touched on after it, this is like a disease that has riddled Rangers for too many years now. This mentality, this attitude, this kind of passive nature in games, this group of players who pick and choose when they want to get up for games, and it's normally European games or big cup games, but the run-of-the-mill league stuff doesn't seem to interest them. And look, that's obviously what triggered Russell Martin's comments post-match.
Yeah, interesting, Scott, right? A couple of things. Is there not an element here of a manager, and first one game into a 38-game league season, and he's filleted his own players, hammered them? Is there not an element here of that looks very much like a guy who's trying to play to the gallery a little bit? Because that was my big reading from it. I mean, he's telling the Rangers fans nothing they don't already know about these players, but he's the guy that's picking. And I think it deflects massively away from the style of play, which I think is an issue. I think the way that he wants this team to play, they're taking crazy high-risk chances in areas of the pitch where it should be safety first. And then there is no sort of, they're way too cautious in the areas of the pitch where they need to be creative and have a cutting edge. And I think it's a bad formula. I really do. But we're not talking about that. We're not talking about Russell Martin and his tactics here. We're going back to these players just can't hack it.
Yeah, it's hard. Listen, it's hard to disagree. I think he was right in his criticism of the players, and I think he probably had to do that. The reason I say that is, I agree with you, in terms of playing at the gallery a wee bit. I think it is what the fans want to hear, and I think he knows that. But the good thing about that is, Jack, with the previous two managers, when they lost the first day of the season, lost points in the opening day of the season, Michael Beale and Philippe Clement, they did the opposite. They tried to protect their players and tried to make excuses and came up with all sort of mitigating factors as to why Rangers weren't ready and why they didn't pick up 3 points. And look how that ended for those two. So I think it was the right thing to do. I listened to Chris Sutton after the game yesterday. I don't know if you did on Sky, and he said something that I thought was interesting, but the more I thought about it, I tended to agree with him. He basically said he thought that by coming out and filleting them the way he did, it kind of told him that he's looked at these players over pre-season and just doesn't fancy a lot of them. And I think he might have a point there. I mean, we were saying this was going to be a big rebuild, Jack, over the summer. I mean, it looks as if Russell Martin would quite happily lose a raft of these players. I mean, literally almost wipe the slate clean. Now, the problem he's got is that's just impossible to do in 1, 2, maybe even 3 windows. Get rid of all these players. But the problem is, he started the starting team yesterday had 4 of his new signings, but 7 others who have been there, for minimum 12 months, 2 years or more, as part of a squad who are associated with failure. And that's what he's talking about after the game, this mentality which has been allowed to seep in. I've spoken about it so many times on here, written so many pieces about it in the paper. Rangers for too long have become accustomed to accepting second best, and that's the problem, and that's a cultural thing. It's so hard to change, but Russell Martin at least is recognising that. And just getting back to your point, Jack, about the style, I agree, because it's hard not to disagree. Aside from all of that, aside from everything that we've said, I know it's early days, but Rangers fans should be seeing more. I mean, Russell Martin's meant to be a possession-based manager. I mean, Motherwell kept the ball better than Rangers did.
Yeah, 100%. They were both playing a very similar style. It's just Motherwell were far better at it.
Right? I mean, Motherwell's midfield 3 was far better, far more functional, and kept the ball better than Rangers' midfield 3, and that should be a big worry. I mean, I'm not into, I'm not really into stats and XG or the rest of it, but you're reading some of the stats this morning about chances created and possession, and Rangers having a minus XG, and I think there was one stat saying the Rangers have now conceded 50 shots in the these first 3 games, the 2 European games and then the Motherwell game. That's just unacceptable. And I'm sure it was 50. I think it was 50 shots combined over those 3
games. That's mad.
Over those 3 games. Which is obviously not what he wants. And look, I tried to stick up for Russell Martin and these players after the Panathinaikos away game, because, and I still feel that, irrespective of performance, to get through that tie and win 3-1, when a lot of people expected them to get out, I think was a big achievement for them, that secured group stage football, which is obviously crucial for them this season. But I said at the end of that piece that, it's a different ballgame when you start losing points in the league, because that has to be the priority. I keep saying it, the last 2 years, I said it to Russell Martin at his press conference on Friday, this Rangers team have dropped points in the last 2 years consecutive. It just can't happen again. And he kind of accepted it, but there's always that caveat of, well, if it happens, we've plenty of time to recover. That's not good enough either, because the previous 2 managers couldn't recover and ended up losing their jobs because they let Celtic get too far ahead.
Scott, I'm going to ask you a question, right? And I know that you were a wee midfield operator, right?
Yeah.
Midfield dynamo.
You talked about Motherwell having the better of the midfield. You were totally right. They seem to have more bodies, more legs, and they were cutting through the Rangers midfield. Now, when you're looking at that at the game, does it look properly set up to you? Raskin playing so far to the left, Diomande playing so far to the right. The fullbacks didn't seem, we saw in the first game at home at Panathinaikos what we thought was the sort of Russell Martin master plan, which was really inverted fullbacks with Max Aarons coming inside, almost pushing Raskin out to the flank. I didn't see any of that. Not so much in the second leg in Athens, and certainly not the weekend. So you get fullbacks that are staying in their sort of traditional berths with midfielders in front and wide. And I just thought it leaves holes all over that midfield. And Motherwell were able to play into them and run through them, run over the top of them in that area.
Sorry to jump in, Scott, but before you come back on that, we've got a lot of people in the comments saying similar. Diomande and Raskin were 2 of the 5. He played out of position. A lot of fans saying that Russell Martin might have filleted the players, but he has to take some responsibility as well.
100%, Daniel. He's got to take responsibility because Keith's right. There was decisions made yesterday, and there's players playing out of position. No, and it just doesn't look right. I mean, where do you start? I mean, Max Aaron's playing at left back isn't going to work. I mean, the manager admitted that himself at the press on Friday. What the solution to that is, I don't know. It's probably a new left back coming in because clearly he doesn't fancy Jeffrey at all. But when you look at yesterday's game,
more than he does Yilmaz.
I know. Gassama is, or certainly the last couple of games, has been Rangers' most dangerous player, most dangerous attacker. But they couldn't get the ball to him yesterday because every time Max Aaron's got it, he cuts in on his right foot. I mean, he's never opening himself up to get Gassama on the ball with his left foot. That was an issue. And I think Raskin's a big one. Maybe not so much Diomande in that system, but Raskin, to me, he's not comfortable in that attacking number 8 role on the left-hand side. I mean, so many times in the first half yesterday, he's getting the ball fired into him. He's either side on or he's back to goal. And listen, I like Raskin as a player, but he's not technically adept enough at dealing with that situation. He's got 2 Motherwell players on him, and he's got his back to the game. He's far better suited when the game's in front of him. And is he the perfect number 6? Is he the answer for Rangers at number 6? A lot of fans think so because he did well there last season. I'm not 100% sure, but I certainly believe he's better there than he is as one of these attacking number 8s. Even Rothwell, I mean, I thought Rothwell was going to be the number 8 when he came in. I thought he was going to be the guy driving into the box and playing killer passes and travelling with the ball and going box to box. But he's obviously been deployed as a number 6, and I don't think that suits him either. So there's so many issues there, so many issues he's got to sort out. There's obviously going to be new players coming in. Kieran Dowell, who I'm sure we'll talk about, has unbelievably become a regular starter and playing 90 minutes almost every week. That isn't right either. It'll obviously change, you would think, with the wingers coming in. Obviously, Mikey Moore's come in, and the boy Antman looks as if that will be done in the next couple of days. So that will give them options and strength and depth in the wide areas. But there's so much wrong with it. And you're right, that's where the manager has to take responsibility. But of course, he will argue, and he's right, that tactics go out the window if players don't want to run and don't want to play with a hunger and a desire and an intensity. And that's obviously what he was getting at yesterday.
We're getting a really big response, guys, on Russell Martin's post-match comments. So let me throw a few of these at you and get your take. Russell Martin threw the Rangers players under the bus, deservedly so. They started to play long balls as the panic set in. Motherwell played through the lines and deserved more. This one, how can Martin call out egos when his plan B is to do plan A better? Sean says, I think most agree with Martin, but it's a very bad look for his first league game. Brian says, Rangers need a John Gregg to push them forward on the pitch. And Singing the Blues says, if Martin doesn't drop some players now, he will look weak. So, I mean, is it a risky strategy?
That's interesting, Daniel. That's interesting because, I mean, I've said in my kind of piece for the paper tomorrow that Martin's right. I think he's right in what he said after the game. I think we all agree on that. But the proof's going to be in the pudding now for Tuesday night with his team selection, because he's come out and praised Lyle Cameron for coming off the bench and doing well. He's praised Dessler's attitude coming off the bench. So these two need to start on Tuesday then. If he's so angry and so hurt by that performance, and he's calling players out for their attitude and kind of character or whatever, then professionalism, these two need to start, and I would expect even more changes. If he feels so strongly about it, this team has to change for Tuesday night. If he's going to call players out, he has to take them out the team. He said people who don't want to go with him will be left behind. So let's see some evidence of that on Tuesday night. And just on that, that's the one thing about filleting these players in the way he did. You've got to imagine he's having a pop at fringe guys like Bayrami and Cortez and people like that. But what do you do with them? No, you're saying they'll be left behind. Left behind where? At Murray Park, training with the kids, earning 20 grand a week with 2-3 years left in their contract. It's no easy. So it's a difficult situation for the manager to navigate through this and get to the end of the window and somehow try and offload some of these characters that he's talking about.
Do you know, Scott, I've got a funny feeling that, see when he was the quote about some of these guys need to drop their egos, I've got a funny feeling that was aimed at Raskin.
Yep.
And if I'm right, and if that's how he feels about Nico Raskin, then I think that's a change that he probably has to make for Tuesday night.
Sorry, Keith, sorry, I didn't mean to jump in. I'm not saying you're wrong, but what made you think it was Raskin?
See, when the quote about egos, right? I think Nico Raskin is quite an outspoken guy. I think he's got a very strong view of where he's best suited and where he wants to operate in a midfield. And I can only imagine, because you saw some of the body language, especially that first game against Panathinaikos, when at times he was out on the touchline. Body language wasn't perhaps great. It wouldn't surprise me if there's been a full and frank discussion about, whether or not he's utilising Nico Raskin in the optimal manner by pushing him further out to the left. Now, if there's been a discussion if Raskin said, well, I actually should be playing more centrally, then that might then lead to a conversation about dropping egos. And it's a couple of things that he said about Raskin, when he first came in, Nico will need to learn that he doesn't need to do everything. And it's almost as if he's trying to marginalise him in that team. And I'm struggling to get my head around that, because Nico Raskin at the top of his game is a player who makes that Rangers side a great deal better than they would be without him. And I just wonder, I think that's one to keep an eye on for Tuesday night. Will Raskin start in midfield? Put it this way, of the substitutions that he made, and almost every substitution he made on Saturday made the team weaker, the decision to take Raskin and Diomande off, I was really surprised by him.
Jack, there might be something in that, right? I don't disagree, but the only thing I'd say is, he took Diomande off first yesterday for a start. I think Raskin lasted 73 minutes, which I think if he had a real issue with him, he might have come off earlier in the second half. And obviously, it's later on that they concede the goal, and the defending for the goal is so poor for Tavernier and Dowell. It's untrue, as well as the guys that are actually in the box ball watching as the boy Longello scores the goal. Dowell lasted the 90 minutes, and I'm not listen. Dowell has put a shift in for the two Panathinaikos games in an unfamiliar position, and I'm assuming Russell Martin really likes his attitude. In fact, we know that because we asked him about it in Athens after the game the other night. But Dowell lost Longello twice in the last 10 minutes. They nearly cost Rangers a goal with Paul McGinn by no tracking him initially.
Aye.
And then he's poor again for the goal. Him and Tavernier, as I say, the defending was abysmal for the goal. So I don't know why you would come out after the game and you're then going to have a pop at like Raskin and Diomande, because as much as Rangers were poor in the second half, I don't think you can really blame them for the way Rangers lost the game. So I'm not sure, but I think you're right that the Raskin thing is an issue, because he's not been played in his best position. Clearly, he's not been utilised well enough. And as you say, Keith, if he's bigging up Lyle Cameron, and I thought Lyle Cameron actually did well when he came on, and I really like his attitude. If he's bigging him up, the way he did, he should come in on Tuesday night. And you've got to think it's going to be for Raskin or Diomande in one of the positions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I just, and where I'm struggling a bit as well, Scott, is he was talking about players jogging, They're not running. They're jogging about. They're doing what they want to do. They're being selfish, self-preservation, all these words and phrases that were used. But Kieran Dowell stays on the pitch, and as you said, I lost count of the amount of times people were getting past him down his side, and he was jogging back. So I think you're in dangerous ground as a manager if you're going to say, you weren't doing enough, Kieran Dowell, well played, when the players can see with their own eyes, well, he's the guy that's jogging here. So I'll be fascinated to see how this plays out over the next wee while.
The Dowell thing is fascinating. I mean, this is a guy who, he's been at Rangers just over 2 years now, and anybody that's watched him in a Rangers jersey in Scottish football, it's pretty certain he's not good enough. He's not going to cut it at Rangers in this league. I mean, he goes to League One on loan last season. Birmingham does really well by all accounts, helps them get promotion. Every Rangers fan to a man was convinced Kieran Dowell's time at the club was up. I mean, it was finished. There was no way back for him. But not only has Russell Martin integrated him back into the squad, he's starting him in every game and in a position where he's totally unsuited, because every time he gets the ball on the right flank, he's not got a trip to get by MD, he's not going to run past MD, he's constantly cutting inside, into congested traffic. I mean, I said this before we came on, I mean, it's some hill to die on as a manager, Kieran Dowell. I mean, it's a dangerous game. It's a dangerous game in managers. And I know Russell Martin has spoken to Barry Ferguson. I know he's spoken to other previous Rangers manager. I think he spoke to Gio van Bronckhorst as well, who obviously Dowell was there at that time. No, Dowell wasn't there at that time, but he spoke to a few managers. Definitely know he's spoken to Barry. He would have known about a lot of these players. We were joking about it before. I mean, me or you could have sat and told him about these players' attitudes before he came in, how they raise their game for a big night in Europe, but can't turn up on a Saturday when it comes to the Premiership. These players have been doing it now for so many years. So how it's taken this long, I wrote it's early in the season, but he's now been there 6 weeks. And it seems like he's now decided, the attitude's not right. Well, look, 6 weeks ago, we could have told you this about the players, and we could have also told you that Kieran Dowell's not going to do in the eyes of the Rangers fans, and that has to change.
In the comments, Rangers Easy OK says, if Raskin doesn't want to sign a new contract, that's fine, sell him. Diomande gets away with absolute murder from the support, turns up the odd time in Europe, but completely anonymous domestically. He then goes on to say, Danilo's not good enough. Dowell, a joke. The captain defensively horrendous again. Midfield imbalanced. About to make her 9th signing with Ant-Man. You could argue we need another 9.
What worries me, Daniel. I don't know if Keith will agree, but it worried me slightly when Russell Martin a few weeks ago came out and said about his leadership group in the dressing room. I think it was Butland, Tavernier, Suter, and Dowell.
And Dowell, aye.
I'm sorry, that, no due respect to these guys, that's a group of players that, again, have been synonymous with failure at Rangers over the last few years. I think you had to go and sign leaders, guys that were going to come in with a different attitude, a different mentality, a hunger to go and push this team on, a new team, and push it on to new heights and go and challenge Celtic, compete for titles. I think you look at the 7 or 8 signings that he's made, I don't doubt a lot of them are good players and will become good players, technically gifted players. Do you see any real leaders in there? I mean, I thought Rothwell was going to be one of them, but by all accounts seems pretty quiet on the pitch. I don't know that for certain, but we were doing it at St George's Park, seeing a bit of the training. I've obviously been at the games. Doesn't he strike me as the most vocal leader on the pitch? I think that's a worry for Rangers. If you're relying on, again, Tavernier, Suter, Dowell, guys that have been there, guys that have get used to being second best, I think it's going to be a struggle for you, and I think that has to change as well.
A few people in the comments are kind of singling out James Tavernier, and I always think he gets a bit of stick, or too much stick, James Tavernier personally, but I mean, there, Luke Skywalker saying he should be dropped. John says surely Martin needs to get rid of serial losers like Tav Dow, otherwise they'll end up costing him his job. But as you said, Scott, it's one thing saying that I need to get rid of these boys, but who's going to take them?
Well, that's a problem. I mean, it's one of the hardest jobs in football, I think, now, Daniel, for sporting directors and managers, is to get rid of players. No, it's relatively easy going and buy players and filling your squad, but trying to get guys out the door who haven't done it. And that's the issue Russell Martin's going to have. I touched on it earlier. It's okay calling out guys like Bayrami and Cortez and maybe a couple others. There's guys that we've not even mentioned, by the way, like Cifuentes and Yilmaz, who are still, kind of, hanging about the place. How do you get rid of these guys if they're not playing and they're not playing well and they're on big money? Very difficult. And listen, that's a whole new argument about Rangers recruitment in the last few years, which we know has been really poor. But it just goes back to, look, we said it all through the summer. Amidst the takeover, this is a massive, massive job for Russell Martin and the American owners, because it's a complete overhaul of this squad. And we knew it was going to take a bit of time, but obviously the aim coming in was to try and facilitate this change, but at the same time win games. And it's a small sample size. We've only had one league game, but judging by yesterday's performance, it looks as if that's going to be really difficult for him.
And just before we wrap up on that, Lauren says, why is it all about Rangers? Let's talk about how good Motherwell played in the second half. I thought they were brilliant, Keith. I thought particularly in that second half, I was stunned how much they dominated.
Yeah, I think Rangers made it really easy for them. And I'll be very interested to monitor Motherwell's progression under the new manager. Clearly, he's got he's a very similar kind of idea, and he said, to how he wants his team to play to Russell Martin's. That they almost share the same philosophy. So it'll be really interesting to see how Motherwell go. I thought Rangers made it really easy for them to play yesterday. I'll be interested to see how that looks against sides that make it more difficult. I just think Rangers didn't compete yesterday, and I don't know about you, Scott, but yeah, and look, I've heard you said played some football in flashes, and maybe they did. For me, and this is where I think Russell Martin is probably right, but then again, we all know it anyway. Rangers went into their shells. See the moment Butland spills the shot, and then he saves it on the rebound of the follow-up. To me, that seemed to jolt Rangers. They had been okay. They'd settled into it okay. They were moving the ball around pretty well. They'd got one goal up. As soon as that moment happened, I just think it looked to me as if they started to get really concerned. And where I think, and this is why I'm banging on a little bit about the style of play, if the players don't believe in the style of play and they don't believe that it's going to get the best out of them or enable them to win games, that's when the manager will have a credibility problem inside his own dressing room. And I just get the feeling there was an element of that crept into that performance, that as the game went on, they didn't enjoy playing that system.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I mentioned this earlier, but everything you read about Russell Martin at Swansea and MK Dons and Southampton, it was like, these teams just keep the ball for fun. I mean, if there was any criticism, it was like, they had too many passes. Do you know what I mean? It was like, but apparently they just smother you, with possession. They keep the ball for endlessly. I've the European games, I was willing to kind of almost ignore that, because they're playing against a good team. They've just got to find a way of winning, getting through. But it was always in my mind that the first league game, away to Motherwell, Motherwell played really well yesterday, but they're a bottom six Scottish Premiership team. Rangers should be going there and absolutely dominating possession. Even at this early stage of kind of Russell Martin trying to implement the style, I expected Rangers to, from the off yesterday, to dominate the ball. I'm expecting Rothwell to be running the game, same way as Callum McGregor ran the game for Celtic today, pretty much for the first whistle. That just didn't happen at all. As we said earlier, Motherwell were better in possession than Rangers were. That would be a massive worry. I mean, forget Europe, but if you can't go to bottom six Scottish Premiership teams and have more of the ball and be dominant in possession and create chances, you've got a real problem in your hands.
Briefly before we finish, guys, 2 other games today. Falkirk and Dundee United played out a 2-2 draw. Falkirk's first game back in the top flight in 15 years.
And that's what you're going to get from Falkirk, by the way. Absolute mayhem for a season. And I think they're going to do fine in this league. But I do think they're going to bring with them a really attractive, energetic style of football. The place was packed today. It's a funny stadium, isn't it? The pitch, I know it's plastic, but it's one of the really good ones. It looked nice. I just think Falkirk are going to just do fine in this league this season, and they're going to attack games in the manner in which they had a go at Dundee United right from the off today. There's no fear, no backward step. Went behind a couple of times, got back a couple of times, and I just think that's going to be the story of Falkirk. I think every game they play in is likely to be a lot of fun to watch.
The other game, of course, though, a Kieran Bowie double rendered Dundee to a 2-1 defeat at home to Hibs. We've talked about Stephen Prez a little bit before on the Hotline Live, Scott. It's not really been a great start to the season at all, has it?
No, it's not been a great start, but I mean, I think in terms of that game, I think Daniel, most people would have Hibs done as big favourites.
That's fair.
And even then, Hibs having to recover for that absolute body blow of the late Michelin winner in midweek. So to go away from home to Dens, even to a Dundee team which is obviously struggling a wee bit under a new manager, I think that's a good win for Hibs. And you mentioned Bowie. I mean, I've said on here a couple of times, I think Bowie's a really good player for Hibs, and getting off to a flyer with 2 goals in the opening day. I mean, he could be a wee kind of a dark horse for being up there in terms of the top scorers if he plays regularly, stays fit for Hibs, and they do well. So I think David Gray will be delighted with that. Just off the back of the European game, to recover so quickly, go away from home in the league, which is never easy, and your centre forward gets 2 goals. I think it's a big win for Hibs.
Aye. I think as well, Kieran Bowie for Scotland, but there you go, we'll see. I think that brings to the end of tonight's Hotline Live with Record Sport. Thanks very much for all the comments. We massively appreciate it. We'll be back to do it all again at 6 p.m. tomorrow night. Hope you can join us then. Keith, Scott, it's always a pleasure.
Cheers, guys.
And thanks for watching at home. Cheers.